Welcome to this week's episode of Women Serve Too. Today, I actually have a really special guest with me, April Chen, because she was actually one of my officers when I was enlisted so many years ago. We both had our first duty stations at Ramstein. So we'll kind of dive into her military experience in a second, but she's originally from San Francisco, I believe a huge 49ers fan. She also has been in the Air Force for 13 years as a career officer, and she drives cars, which is super cool. So, April, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, of course. No problem. No problem at all. It'll be my first podcast, so this will, go swimmingly, like all first time things.
Oh, of
Yeah.
course.
My name's April. I'm from San Francisco. Yes, a 49ers fan. Super bummed. Don't talk about it. Not okay. I'm also a Giants fan. Love baseball, and I'm currently stationed at McDill out here in Tampa, Florida. Yeah, it's been 30 years. I think it's probably been about at least 10 since I last saw you, Brittany. At
Yeah,
our first duty station.
I know
How
it's
far
been
we've
a
come?
minute. I
Yeah.
know. I think I knew you as a second lieutenant, to be completely honest with you. So let's talk about that journey. What made you decide to join the military, and like what made you join the Air Force and the officer route?
Yeah, I never had plans at all to join the military. I'm from San Francisco, super liberal town. Um and none of my parents are in the military. Oh, I totally forgot, Brittany. We have to start with the disclaimer. I completely forgot. So any of the thoughts or views expressed in this video are those solely of my own, not representative of the U.S. Air Force or U.S. SOCOM. All right, now we can officially start. Okay, so I ended up going to Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University out in Prescott, Arizona. And when I got there, about 70 to 80% of the kids were all in ROTC of some sort. And I kind of was poking around and asking around, and basically what caught my eye was you get a free job after college. I was like, wait, I don't have to fill out job applications. I worked at Foot Locker when I went through high school, and that was my first choice job. Only after I filled out 6 other job applications for, I don't know, Jamba Juice or whatever, all the other stores in the mall. So I joined, and then I picked up a scholarship, which then I lost my scholarship because I didn't hold the 3.0 GPA, but they still allowed me to stay in the program. I just switched my major twice, so I was in 3 different majors, and I find that completely fine. During my college years, and I'm glad I switched over because I went from aerospace engineering, super hard, can't do math at all, cannot. And then I went to aerospace studies, which was a little bit too easy. It's kind of like pick your own adventure, make your own major, pick your 3 minors, and then finally I settled with global security studies. So that's worked out quite well. And I did college in 5 years, and I loved it. Air Force ROT things I would recommend. As a college student, if you don't know where you're going in life, because I definitely didn't, and I went from full on city kid in San Francisco to middle of nowhere Arizona, Prescott, Arizona, which is about 2 hours north of Phoenix. So it was a lot of fun. Air Force ROTC it will open your eyes slowly and let you acclimate into the military life. Plus, you get free food and gym membership, basically. So I find it a little bit less intimidating than what Brittany went through basic. We definitely did not get yelled at on our first day. We actually didn't really get yelled at until our third year, until we were juniors. So,
Oh, well, that's nice.
yeah, so here I am 13 years later. I joined in 2010. I only signed up for 4 years. I did a 4-year contract, and I just there wasn't reason ever to get out. At each opportunity, each base, it just kept. There was always something cool about it, and I got to travel a whole lot. I wouldn't say that every job was amazing, but I did love certain aspects of each assignment. So yeah, so as a college kid, I highly recommend in your first year, you basically go to Air Force classes twice a week, and you get the uniform, you put on the uniform, and you go to Air Force classes for about I think, 3 hours, 3 to 4 hours a week. Depends how big of a detachment you are. So I know some of the smaller military, the schools with the smaller detachments, and some of the more like not so military dominated communities, such as Berkeley, where detachments only, I think, at that time back in 2010, probably 25 people. Your classes are probably going to be a lot smaller. Whereas Embry-Riddle, we had about I think a 300-person detachment. So you start freshman, and you only have to no commitments. You put on a uniform. Yes, they give you the uniform. You show up to PT, which is physical training in the morning. I think depending on what detachment school you go to and how serious they are with it. I think we did PT 3 times a week for an hour from like 6 to 7 in the morning, and that's all you do. And as a freshman year, you get 3 hours of military introduction a week, and then you take the uniform off, and then you're a college kid. So it's great. You don't get to lose the college experience. I still partied. In fact, I think I had a couple more friends because then when you're in ROTC, you get a couple more military geeks with you that are all interested and curious also. So none of it is intimidating. I think the most intimidating thing was signing the paper that says you're agreeing to join the program. I'm sure it was a lot different than what Brittany's first day.
Yeah, just a little bit. Sometimes I look back and kind of wish I did the ROTC route. So yeah, because I know Embry-Riddle is like definitely where I feel like a lot of officers end up going. So it doesn't surprise me that your detachment was so big. And then you get the best of both worlds. Like you're, commissioning, which is great. I always tell people, especially if you're going to get a degree, you might as well commission, and then live that college life. So you talked about your different PCSs, and we've already mentioned that your first PCS, like your first orders, was to Ramstein. So where was each of the different places? What did you take away from each assignment? And then kind of talk about like the daily life as a female officer.
Yeah, so I was first at Ramstein straight out of tech school. So I was super excited. Never been to Europe in my life. And I had just graduated from college and also just commissioned. So in ROTC, on the day you graduate, either you commission and you do the whole ceremony and get your butter bars pinned on in the same week. So it's super exciting. So now I'm in Germany, and it's my first time being exposed, leading real life airmen, not just fellow cadets or freshman cadets that we've been training in ROTC. And I think the greatest lesson I took away from my first assignment was how to handle some of the different personalities and how to appreciate all of the folks, even though they're crazy, even though they're wild, even though sometimes they do stupid things like steal bicycles out of the dorm for no reason. But like we're all in a learning environment, so I definitely got appreciation for just the different aspects of the Air Force life and the different personalities, whether good or bad, and that everyone has something good to bring, and everyone's there to dare to succeed and make the mission happen. So super appreciative that squadron was more of an operational unit. And yeah, I learned a lot. And in terms of, first assignment as a female, there's definitely, I would say, a little bit of a competition against the other females who are of the same rank as, us all females know. And looking back on that, I wish there wasn't that much of a competition. I wish that instead we helped each other. I mean, we are like all competing for, number whatever 5 of 50. But when you're a second lieutenant, it doesn't really matter because no one's gonna look at your records and say, "Oh, why are you number 4 of 50 second lieutenants?" Like at that point in time, it really should not matter what your stratification is. And I think what should have been taught to us as second lieutenants was how to help each other succeed and get through like our first couple years in the Air Force. So, and I was definitely learned a lot about also leading airmen. I'm sure, Brittany, you learned a lot about Air Force officers we may have different rank and we make different money and we come from different backgrounds, but at the end of the day, we kind of are the same. We're all like goofy. I mean, other than sometimes they're the same age as me, and sometimes they've been in a lot longer. So, I liked hearing the advices of the master sergeants that are with us, the senior master sergeants. Definitely did not see a lot of female role models, I will say. I think definitely it started to dwindle after the captain rank. It's a great experience. Obviously took a lot away from just eye-opening of leadership, and then how we have to help each other, and a lot of respect for just all ranks and all different types of personalities.
So if you could go back, like what is some advice that you would give like a new lieutenant coming into the Air Force as a female, or even in any branch, really?
Ooh, that's a hard question because for all females are so different, and I feel like this new, these folks that are a couple years younger than us are even more motivated than we were, and less timid and more goal driven. I would definitely say to just keep your eyes open and your ears open and just absorb and learn as much as possible. There's no right answer. You're going to be wrong and you're going to be right, but you're going to be wrong a lot of times. That's why you're a butter bar. So they're just saying, it's called a butter bar because butter's easy to melt. You will definitely melt. And that's okay though. So you want to learn all these mistakes, all these weird things about people, all the little weird stuff about the Air Force and all the difficult parts as a second lieutenant. Because I will tell you, by the time you get to a major, there's no more of that. There's no more learning.
So talk us through that process. Like you're a butter bar, you're learning the ranks, you're learning the structure. And then as you're getting more comfortable, or do you really get more comfortable with being in a female role and being a female leader, especially as you rank up?
So I would say that overall, being a female and in the Air Force, I think I've been pretty fortunate. I wouldn't say that there's a lot of discrimination. I wouldn't say that there's racism. I wouldn't say that we're constantly, being penalized or looked down upon. I would say in the Air Force, we kind of moved beyond that, a little bit more civilized and that kind of thinking. So I would say a lot of it is incumbent upon how you perform, whether you're female or male. And I will say that never Like if you have a vision for whatever assignment or job you have, and as a lieutenant, you're probably going to have a lot of those, and they're probably going to be very crazy and wrong. Totally okay, right? So I would say that one of the best things that I've learned throughout the time is it's okay to go and ask for what I learned later on. It's called a vector check. To ask your leadership and say, hey, this is my vision. This is my plan. What do you think? Is it on track with your vision? Is it on track with your plan? Am I in the same country? Am I on the same track? Or am I just on a different plan? And I think as you ask those questions, and don't ever be afraid to ask questions, which I wished I actually learned earlier. Because the earlier you ask the questions and the more time you have to work through certain projects and problems, then you're developing that trust and that relationship with your superiors and your subordinates at the same time. Because then now everyone feels like their opinions matter. That would be my greatest advice. And I tried that while I was with you, Brittany. I tried, but I can only do so much as second lieutenant. So
No, you were great when we worked together back in the day. So is it easy for officers to kind of like plan their career? Because like I know with enlisted, they're just kind of like, okay, you're gonna go here because that's where we say so. So is it a little bit easier for officers to be like, hey, this is what I see. Can we make this?
I would say that is one of the most difficult aspects of being an officer, let alone be a female. I would say that is one of the much more difficult than just being a female, other than the moving. There's really, especially when you're more of a junior officer, there's not really a say in where you want to go. You can always give your input, and you can always provide your justification and your reason, but it's more dependent on if there's an opening or if that's good for your career development. So there's a lot more wiggle room also when you're a second lieutenant. Like when I was at Ramstein, I said, hey, I want to go to the unit right across base and work with a different aircraft. And that was perfect, right? But I'm not afforded that. And that works for a second lieutenant because they can just take on the second lieutenant. They're like, okay, well, we can use the extra manpower. But as you progress, that no longer becomes an option, which is very difficult because then I'm forced to follow where the Air Force needs. So yeah, I would say that has been the most difficult part. I think I've moved probably 5 times in my 13-year career.
So Ramstein was your first one. You're at MacDill. Where was the other few times?
So I went to Ramstein. I was fortunate to stay there for about 4 years. Then I went to Korea, which was also another amazing assignment for another year working with the Army. And then I went to Germany, to Stuttgart. Germany is second time around, which is a different base than Ramstein at more of a headquarters staff level. And then after that, I went to Langley Air Force Base out in Virginia, working for Air Combat Command. So there's another back-to-back staff assignments. And so, and now I'm in Florida at MacDill. So I miss working. I miss the jobs I had as a second lieutenant. I miss working operational tactical side. So I definitely relish those moments where I had the airmen that worked for me. Whether that be 5 or I don't know. At one point we had 50 airmen, Brittany. Yeah. So, yeah, there's definitely, and I'm now realizing the job choices for as you go higher in rank are a lot more limited too. So I would say as a second lieutenant, definitely do not be afraid to voice what you want to be. You want to go work with helicopters? Tell your boss that. If you don't want to go work with helicopters and you say, I do not care for the flying culture, tell your boss that also. Because then they can put you somewhere where you want. And if you like to teach, some folks like to teach. I do not at all. I hate grading papers. I hate writing papers. I hate reading other people's papers. We should just all have podcasts and grade each other on podcasts. Then, that's the assignment, right? So, yeah. So make sure you let your supervisors know. So, and also as a supervisor, you do your folks a complete dishonest if you don't have this conversation with your folks about where to go. Because as a second lieutenant, you don't know what you don't know, literally. Yeah, when you go to a new base, it's basically you're like going to a new college or a new high school. You get new friends, new teachers, new leadership that you've likely never met before.
So we talked about leadership, like as you're progressing through, I mean, you've been in there for 13 years, and you're just going to go for the full 20. Like, what makes leader more than just a boss? Like, what makes a leader great?
So I think and I really had to be taught this when I was in my last deployment. I think what really makes a leader great, and this is just April's thoughts that I have recently learned within the last 2 years, so sad though, is that when your subordinates are working for you, the main thing that they really, really desire and look for is your support. whether you like what they did, whether you don't like what they did, I think you just once you give your subordinates the support, obviously a little bit of guidance, obviously guidance too, that's within your job as the leader. But the one thing that folks really appreciate and want them to come back to work for you and produce products that are way above the standard is your support, for whether that's what they do on a daily basis, whether that's what they do outside of work, but throughout the whole gamut of stuff, to include their family, to include their maybe sometimes remembering birthdays. I got in trouble because I forgot someone's birthday one day, and they interrupted me in the middle of a staff meeting and said, "Hey, you forgot it's this person's birthday." And I was like, "Well, it's not the appropriate time." But then, of course, I went back and I made a card, and then we celebrated his birthday while we were deployed. So I think it's just the support, because the support and by support I mean kind of like caring about what your folks' products look like, caring about the work that they produce. Not just saying, "Oh yeah, that looks great, cool, thanks for writing that." Thanks for showing up. Like, more than just thanks for showing up to work, because that's the standard, right? We need to show up. But if someone can give you a good product, someone goes way above, what their comfort zone is, you have to recognize that, and you have to appreciate that. You have to find ways to express it.
Yes, I completely agree with that. And I also agree that was not the right time for someone to announce the whole birthday situation. So that was bad on them. But did you have, because I know for the enlisted side, we have Airman Leadership School, which doesn't really teach you a lot about leadership. It's more about how to write EPRs. So what resources or what tools did the Air Force give you to sharpen your leadership skills? Do you watch any podcast or listen to any podcasts? Do you read any books? What do you use to sharpen your leadership skills?
So, actually, maybe they should send officers to that class about writing EPRs, because I had none of that when I got presented an EPR. So for an officer, we're supposed to get a bunch. the majority of our leadership training during ROTC. So let me just backtrack a little bit. So you're freshman, you throw on a uniform 3 times a week. And then, you play Air Force for 3 hours a week. Cool. So as a sophomore, you do the same thing. But now you've got like projects. You're like the historian, you're the photographer for your little flight, your little group. And then once you finish your sophomore, during the summer between your sophomore and your junior, you go to what we call field training, which is our version of basic. And you're supposed to show up. It's only a month long, and you get screamed at the whole month. But you're supposed to show up already knowing how to lead. So when in your sophomore year, as an ROTC cadet, you get little projects, and they teach you little aspects of leadership. We have leadership laboratory on Wednesdays, where you go through different obstacle courses, whether that's physical or kind of puzzles with your flight. And then we also watched movies and clips of examples of good leadership. We watched a couple of Band of Brothers clips and a couple of sports movie clips that I don't quite remember. And you're also doing a lot more classwork and projects from during the Air Force classes, such as giving briefings, and then you're researching different leadership skills of the different Air Force leaders. With that being said, you show up to this field training for 1 month, and I'm not sure if they probably, I would hope they changed a little bit, because I went in 2007. So they expect you to lead your flight through, all the yelling, all of the different projects, obstacle courses, getting to places on time. We had a challenge where we had to park our entire flight of 30 people in a parking spot, so march them appropriately. So I'm pretty sure they changed it from that. So now you've graduated, and so if you make it through the 30 plus days, there's also like a field portion of it. Then when you graduate from that, you become when you're a junior, you're now given the actual cadet leadership roles. You're a deputy flight commander, you're the finance officer, and you're like in the little flight squadron. And all these ROTC detachments are structured like a real Air Force squadron, Air Force wing. So, and then when you're a senior, then you get the wing level positions, where now you're in command of the cadets, the wing cadets, like more than 30 cadets, 50, 60, or even you're the wing commander, you're the vice wing commander, you're the wing director of operations and whatnot. I would say that the greatest tools that we had to learn about leadership, and I was super, super appreciative of this, was our Air Force ROTC instructors, which ranged from tech sergeants all the way up to colonel. And so they came in and taught our different classes. And so they were our role models, and who we had as our view to what the real Air Force looks like. There's also other summer programs you can sign up at when you're a junior that lets you go to a Air Force base and go to the different units, talk to the different real officers throughout the month. You can also do programs at the Air Force Academy. I did one of those. I thought it was really interesting. So that one, there's a lot of leadership involved in it too. It was called Global Engagement at that time. So I would say that there's very limited amount of leadership training and tools other than what you're presented by your instructors and what you're presented by your detachment. And I think at Embry-Riddle, we probably had a lot more leadership experience because our detachment was 300 people. Right? So, yeah, I mean, as a senior, and if, you're in a detachment of 25 people, or you're leading, it's just 25. Vice, you have to work through the multiple different levels of the chain of command in a bigger unit. So, yeah, I think that answers your question.
So that's like the beginning of the leadership. Like, how did you, like, as you continue,
Oh,
um,
yes. Okay.
yeah,
Yes.
through your career, like, what resources or stuff did you utilize to like make yourself a better leader?
So, and this is a great question. I wish the real Air Force would ask this question. um, so in April's opinion, there really isn't a lot of resources and classes presented to you. I mean, I went to yeah, a lot of classes you go to are focused on your career field, um, and I I mean, the biggest resources that were available were your bosses and supervisors. So, and sometimes you get lucky, sometimes you don't get lucky. I would say there's there's really not a lot. I like reading certain articles that my leadership may have written, such as the Green Notebook is one of the good websites. Yeah, there's really and then your peers and talking to each other. There's really not a good list that I could give you on hand. However, the Air Force has recently created within the last 3-4 years what they called the leadership development course, and I think that is hands down one of the best tools that they've come up with. And I did it during COVID, and they were able to section you off into different rooms and groups using Zoom. So during COVID, and it breaks down the different aspects of leadership, because we just use the words leadership as an entire word. But actually, there's an emotional intelligence part of it. There is a storytelling part of it. There's a communications part of it. There is a conflict negotiation, and there is understanding the spectrum of conflict. There was one of the descriptions they gave us was, if you're both on edges of a cliff and you're trying to get to each other while you're building a bridge in the middle, which approaches would you take, and the different types of attitudes and the different personality sets that you come across, and how that potentially will end up as. I'll have to go find that book and send a screenshot of that for you, Brittany.
Yeah,
So
that's
I would
crazy. I
say
didn't
that
even know.
yeah, I would say that there's not many good resources until this latest one.
That's crazy. I didn't even realize that they developed that, but I'm glad they're at least moving in that direction, and especially like adding that emotional intelligence aspect, because that's huge. And there is a book called Emotional Intelligence 2.0, and I know for like both my MBA and my doctorate, like those classes, they make us read the like that book because it's so important to understand emotional intelligence. So I have a two-part question. So the first one is for anyone who is thinking about doing ROTC, what advice would you give them? Like they're like right on that cusp.
I would say do it. You're not signing up for anything. If you like it, you've got 2 years to decide. That's that's I don't know, 365 days times two, whatever that is, the public math. That's a lot of time to decide. You're not signing anything. If you don't like it at the end of 2 years, you're like, you know what? I can't with this military. I can't with this uniform. Not for me. You can still continue with your college student life. Doesn't stop anything. I and like I stayed in even after I lost my scholarship. So, and I think that is telling, not just because I didn't want to leave my friends, or I just, still didn't want to go look for a job. I, it's, provides a good structured avenue for you to kind of decide as a college student what you want to do in your life. And there's no risk. So, and as a college student, this is your time to try to figure out what to do with your life. Try all the things you want to, because later on, you won't get the opportunity to, as we all know, Brittany.
That is very true. So then my second part is for those who, do ROTC, they come in as a second lieutenant and then, work their way up through first, captain, major. What advice do you have for the younger officers? And then what advice would you have for the younger officers?
So I got a lot of advice, a lot of lessons learned here.
Girls, to say it all. Say it all.
I would say that definitely remember everything you learned in ROTC. All of those are valuable lessons, because in ROTC I learned, to always make sure to turn and trust your senior NCOs, because they're gonna be the experts. They're gonna know what's right, what's wrong, and what right should look like, and what questions to ask. I would say that was a huge help. So definitely seek out your master sergeants, your senior master sergeants, even your tech sergeants and your staff sergeants, to kind of guide you, kind of give you the first look of what your assignment's going to be like, and kind of give you left and right limits. The very initial left and right limits. Because as a second lieutenant, left and right limits is like almost non-existent. It's crazy. But they exist. And I would also say that, don't be afraid to try different things. You may think that you don't like running in the dirt, but then, you sign up, but then you go to assignment where you're running with the Army. And oh my God, that opens up so many doors, so many eyes, and so many experiences. So I would say that always be willing to learn from the folks that work for you and from the folks that you work for. It is a competition, unfortunately. I really dislike it, because sometimes the competition kind of overrules the mission, right? I mean, we all joined to save the world one PowerPoint at a time. but to overcome that, you always have to be willing to understand the other person's approach to things, because like Brittany may like me and I may like Brittany, but I guarantee you there's going to be a project that you're going to come across at a certain point in time where Brittany is going to hate me and I'm going to hate Brittany, because we just don't see eye to eye. That's okay, right? But you have to talk to them, and you have to understand, and you have to get to the point of trust where you can have that conversation. Because if you haven't built that relationship, you're not going to get to that level where that sort of stuff is going to get communicated. That's one of the advice I would give, is don't be afraid to communicate. You might suck at communicating. You probably do at second lieutenant. I suck. I'm sure that Brittany did not understand me at least 20% of the time if I was good. But that's okay though, right? So so this is something that I learned from playing basketball. Like, you're never too cool to make a mistake. Second lieutenant, time to make mistakes. All the mistakes. Obviously stay within legal limits. But yeah, that would be one of the advice that I would give to brand new lieutenants. And have visions. I know it's kind of hard, and I think it's important as a second lieutenant where you start developing kind of a vision of what you think, how you want to run, what you think the squadron should look like, what you think this job should look like, what you think your airman would do, right? Just sure, you don't own the squadron, but you can think and have a thought process and say, hey, if I ran the squadron, what would I do? And if I had all the money in the world, if I had, no rank and play, whatnot, what would I do? And I think you start to then if you start that thought process, you can at least identify some things that you have an impact as in your position, and then communicate that vision. And I think the vision part is super important because then it serves as like it's it's your story, but it's also your end state, your goal, right? So everyone knows that your folks will, the people that work for you, say, okay, I got to meet Major Chen over here. Oh, wait, hold on. But Brittany's down here. Hold on. I got to make sure that I get Brittany up here. So I think, yeah. And I think the ultimate challenge as a second lieutenant is to have some type of a vision. And you're going to struggle and you're going to have the wrong one and people are going to make fun of you. But it's okay. Because by the time you get to the higher ranks, you'll have established and learned from all the mistakes that from your vision, because your vision's been destroyed 50 times, right? So, and from that point, you can start having productive conversations.
I love that. I know a lot of people usually get when they're not, I feel. So, what would you give a captain officer who is on the cusp of either staying in or trying to progress further into the ranks? I don't know. It turned into a 3-part question. So for most people or most officers, they like to get out when they're a captain. So you're a major now. What advice would you give a captain who, is on the cusp of whether staying in and wanting to progress through the ranks a little bit more?
Whew. I would say that I've definitely thought at my last job or 2 jobs ago. Actually, no, my last job. Or 2 jobs ago, sure. I've definitely thought several times about quitting. Because I only signed up for 4 years, and I'm done. After 4 years, I don't owe any more time. I would say that the one thing that keeps me coming back to work day in and day out is the fact that I feel like I still have a lot of me to give to the Air Force. And if you're burned out, okay, that's perfectly fine. Perfectly fine to quit. If you're burned out, some of our career fields are really crazy. Got it. If you want to dedicate your life to something else, totally okay. But I would say that if you're, and I definitely had lots of these moments at my tenure point 3 years ago, that like how much more of this can April still give, right? And how much can the Air Force still benefit from, not the Air Force, but my job, whatever I'm going to, benefit from what I still have left? And I think I assess that I still have, quite a bit more that I could give. Have I been burned out? Yes, several times, multiple times. Have I been on the verge of quitting? Yes, several times. That thought has not crossed my mind. Have I thought about moving to guard or reserve? Yes. But I find that that I can make the most amount of impact as active duty, and despite the moving, which is the part I really dislike, I like being in the Air Force. I've learned a lot. I've I feel like there's a lot that I can contribute still to get, to hopefully make an impact, or I think that I could make an impact to bring certain aspects of my career field, the organization and whatnot to a different level, to a level above than what it was when I first joined. So yeah, I think that would be one of my driving factors. And also, if you take a look at your civilian friends and their lifestyles and the benefits that come with it, um, the Air Force as active duty just gives you everything. I mean, like there's really nothing. I don't want to say nothing more I can ask for, because there's always things I can ask for. But I would say that it's at my stage in life, it's a good point for me to be at where the Air Force has taken me to. I mean, I like I the like it's not a bad lifestyle that I have at all. um, I'm not living from paycheck to paycheck. I've got free medical care. I've got free gym. I can feed myself. I can feed my puppy. I can potentially feed a couple kids. If you wanted me to babysit your kids, Brittany, I'm down for that too. But yeah, I would say that from one point, to sum it up, from one point that I believe that I still have more to give the Air Force, and on the other hand, I've really enjoyed my ride, and I kind of wanted to stop. It's cool, and I've not only been able to do Air Force stuff and do officer things and make friends, and own a puppy. But I also get to kind of partake in some. Get to partake in some of the hobbies that I love, such as I also like racing cars and playing golf. And as much as the time schedule, and as much as the limited control I have of my assignments, the Air Force still gives. I think the Air Force still gives me enough of time to pursue those. I'm not just limited to like gotta survive. And I think if I'm living outside of that realm, I'm probably doing pretty well. I should probably stay and continue. Hope that makes sense.
Yeah, and I can't wait to see all of the impact that you make in the next 7 years. So I would, continue watching your journey is just going to be so amazing. So for anyone who wants to stay in contact with you, how can they reach you?
You can, yeah, if you guys ever have questions on what cadet life is like, feel free to reach out. You can hit me up on my Facebook. It's got my name on it. First, it's April Chen. Hit me up on my Facebook. Or you can shoot me an email, and we can get in contact that way also. And I can give Brittany an email that we can include in a post once this video goes up live.
Yes, I will include, oh my gosh, my voice is just going. I will include all dogs in the show notes. But April, thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy day and your life to, share some insight on being a ROTC cadet, being a woman female officer, and just your life in the military. So if anyone has any questions, please reach out to April. Thank you guys so much for listening. Until next time, we will talk to you soon.
Thanks, Brittany, for having me.